So welcome to today's session on event communications. So this is going to be brought to you by myself, Nelson Opany, Senior Manager for Communications and Partnerships at the World Scout Bureau Africa Support Center based in Nairobi, together with my co-facilitator, Mercy. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, Nelson. So my name is Mercy MCB Banda Ngoma. I'm a consultant, a communications consultant. I'm based in Zambia. I'm also a journalist, been practicing for quite a while now. I work for the national broadcaster, and I am excited to co-host with Nelson.
Thank you, Mercy. So over this maybe 1 hour or so, we are going to look at a couple of things. And this is in consideration of the fact that as consultants, you're going to be supporting NSOs in this area. You all know that events are an important part of the movement, and it's important that we support NSOs to leverage those opportunities, not just for the promotion of scouting, but also to, to increase their visibility. And it could also be a gateway for opening up more opportunities for NSOs. So our session today is going to look at, basically what is WASM currently providing under events communications sub-service area. And then we'll go through some basics of event communication. So basically just touching on a few highlights about what event communications is all about. And then we'll look at some past examples of some requests that have been submitted by NSOs. And then we'll do an exercise. Just to try and test out how this scenarios could work out, and then we'll have an opportunity to answer any questions you may have. So basically, as things are right now, one of the areas of support that we are currently providing to NSOs under the WASM services is event communications. And as I've mentioned, events are a great opportunity for promoting scouting, but also involving different stakeholders that have an interest in the movement. So it's important that these events offer, or rather create for the NSO a space or an opportunity for them to profile themselves, for them to showcase scouting. And over the years, we've seen NSOs reaching out to us for support. And among the areas we've been able to, or we are currently offering support under are, things like developing event communication plans, designing, branding and visual assets for events, supporting with digital engagement for different events. And so these are some of the things that you may receive, requests from NSOs for assistance with. But of course, it's not just limited to these particular areas. NSOs, as times evolve, we may find, the various requests covering, different other areas. For instance, even around training on event communications and things like that. So just to set the tone and get us to at least understand a bit more about event communications, let me invite Mercy to take us through this bit of the presentation.
Thank you, Nelson. Okay, so we're going to go through the basics of event communications. Okay, So basically, event communication covers all information that is being circulated or shared and received from all audiences involved in an event of any nature. This could be whether it's a scout camp, whether it's a conference or a training. So whatever event it is, so event communication will cover all information that is being shared, two-way traffic. Then event communication plan is a roadmap or a strategy for marketing, promoting, and managing two-way engagement about the event. This is very important, the communication plan or strategy to make sure that there's effective communication on the event before, during, and after. And as we do that, it's important to be clear on why we are communicating and what we are communicating, how to communicate, to whom we are communicating to, and when to communicate. So the event communications does involve or engage all event stakeholders to make sure that there's a seamless planning for the event communication. Then enhanced by creating a verbal and visual structure that the entire team that is involved in communicating has to adhere to. Then planning event communications into a schedule for relevant distribution times and channels is equally key to a successful strategy. Then it also involves planning event communications ahead of time to help to promote the event in a more effective way. Then event communication plan, when you have the event communication plan in place, you can concentrate on getting to handle other matters or issues concerning the event with a peace of mind. Okay. I'm trying to move that one, Nelson. Could you move to the next slide? Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I think.
Sure.
Yeah, we
Okay,
can hear
thank
you.
you.
I think it's gone.
Okay, so. Okay. Nelson, could you please share my slide?
I think Nelson is not here anymore.
He's not there. Okay.
No, I don't see him.
You don't see, we've lost him. Yeah, I can see we've lost him. Okay, so, okay, we will still continue. I will do it offline. Okay. 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 Apparently, it's the one who's with my slides, so just bear with me just a little bit. Okay. Nelson is back. Thank you, Nelson. Thank you, Nelson. Okay, so we move to the next slide, Nelson. Are you still with us? Thank you so much. Okay. So things to consider when it comes to event communication. We need to be clear on the name of the event, the date when the event will take place, as well as the communication dates and time, the venue, the goal, the objectives, and the outcomes of the program. Then we also need to be clear on the audiences. That's the organizers, the participants, the facilitators, the partners, the sponsors, the media, the service providers, as well as the suppliers. And then the goal and objectives of the strategy, as well as the operational means And then we also need to consider the fact that our goal and our objectives will need to be done in a smart manner. That's simply simple, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. Then we also need to consider communication activities relevant to the event, make sure that we're engaging and audience focused. Then the communication channels, we need to be clear on the channels that we want to use. There are many communication channels available right now. So this could be maybe website via social media platforms, email, telephone, SMS, mobile app, media, or newsletters. Then we also need key messages to make sure that our message is heard and understood. We need to know why we're communicating, what we're communicating, and we also need to be sure how we are communicating, and we have to make sure that we call to action. We make a call to action. Then also to consider is the branding aspect of the event communication. And we need to be clear on what kind of event that we want this to be. So we need to make sure we consider the look of the event, the look and the feel of the event, the tone of the event, the graphics and the promotional material, as well as style guide. Then we also need to consider a communication team that is strong. We need to make sure that the tasks are clear and we have the right people to deliver the communication events. We also need to make sure that they have the right skills, and we also need to make sure that there's a clear system to make sure that we delegate, because at the end of the day, the interest is delivering on time and to the right audience. So delegating is actually a strength. We empower the entire team. Then we also need to consider the communication plan that has been mentioned earlier. It has to be comprehensive, it has to be coherent, and it also has to be relevant to the particular event that is being organized. Then for a successful event planning, we also need a budget. And this is the finances, the human resource that will be involved in this particular event planning, technical capacities, sources, and resource mobilization plan. Then we also need to consider timing, when to communicate, when not to communicate, the frequency of the communication before and during the event itself. And then we also need to consider technology and tools. Nowadays, we also have an option of virtual, like we are doing right now, or if it's going to be in person. And we also have to make sure that we consider audience engagement, and also to consider the broadcast, the means of broadcasting. Is it mass communication and decision-making, communications, scheduling, as well as social listening? Then we need to consider the sustainability of the communication activities. Then the three phases of event communications, these are just basically three. That's before the event, during the event, and after the event. So before the event, this is where we do the announcements, preparatory and the logistical information, the registration and the accreditation of participants, promotional materials concerning the particular event, event concept, content development, audience engagement, securing of partnerships. And it's important that during this period, we engage our audience so that we're able to meet their expectations as much as is possible. Then during the event itself, planned and ad hoc communication activities, updates and highlights. And this is the time where we share photos, videos, stories about the event, And this is where we also have media and audience engagement. For those that are authorized to speak to the media, it's also a good time to allow the media to interact or engage or do interviews with those that are authorized to speak around the event. And then collecting daily feedback, because this helps out to have a better event the next time around. And then after the event is concluded, this is where we do the concluding of communication activities, the reporting, report writing, the archiving, the dissemination of event material, collecting feedback, as well as making sure that we thank all those that participated and supported the particular event.
Thank you very much, Mercy.
Thank you, Nelson.
Now we'll look at some of examples of some previous requests we've received, and we'll look at two of them, and these are primarily from what we've managed to implement in the Africa region. So just to give you a bit of understanding of what kind of requests we get from NSOs. The first one I'll highlight here is an event request we received from Uganda Scouts Association. And for context, Uganda Scout Association was selected to host the 8th Africa Scout Jamboree, which was actually to happen in 2020. And then, as you know, COVID came and the event got postponed. And then it was rescheduled by 1 year to 2021, and it ended up happening virtually. But the request we received from Uganda Scouts Association was for helping them with developing the branding for the event, developing a communication plan for for the NSO, or rather for the event, and also helping them with establishing communication channels through which to promote and publicize the event. So this is a very typical event we expect to receive from NSOs, considering the cycle of different events that that happen. So if you look at regionally, like in Africa, we have key events. We have the Jamboree, we have the conference, and now recently we have the Moot and the Africa Scout Day celebration. So we expect that every time, or rather every year, an NSO is hosting this event, we anticipate that they are going to send us a request, to provide them that support. So this is something we can actually predict. If you look at the calendar of regional and world events available, you can actually predict what kind of event communication support requests you may receive from the NSOs. So that's just one of those examples. And so we were able to work with Uganda Scouts Association and help them to develop a communication plan. With the support of the team in KL, particularly George, our former colleague, we were able to develop full branding for the event, the logo, the different promotional material, so that then this could be made available not just to the NSO but also to other contingents that were planning to come for the event. And then of course we also provided the establishment of support in establishing the communication channels, and ultimately, since the event was held virtually, we also provided the technology upon which the event was conducted. So that's one example. The other example was from Niger, and I mentioned the Africa Scout Day celebrations. So this is something we do every year, and every year a different NSO is selected to host. So in this particular year, in 2019, it was Niger hosting the celebrations. And what they did is that alongside the celebration, they organized other activities, you know, as a way of bringing more NSOs and more participants. We had their zonal conference, their zonal youth forum, and we also had assistant leader trainers course happening, as well as a dialogue for peace workshop and an inter-religious dialogue, you know, conference happening. So it was a series of activities all happening at the same time. And so the NSO reached out to us and, you know, with a request to help them coordinate, you know, communications for these multiple events. And so what we did is that we sat down with them and we were able to support with, you know, some design work for the Africa Scout Day, but also for the other events. We also helped them with developing communication that will go out to the different NSOs about the event and the different activities. We also assisted them to come up with a communication plan for all the different events. And in addition to this, unlike the one in Uganda, since it was held virtually, for this one, we even traveled to Niger and provided on-site communication support. So in terms of covering the event and disseminating news stories from the event. Yeah, so this is the other request that you know, we received. So looking at the two requests is that you find that in some instances, you may need to deliver this support just remotely only. But in some instances, it may actually require, you know, physical travel to the event location. Yeah, so those are just some two examples of services that we've received in the past. In terms of looking at what challenges, you know, as a consultant, you may encounter when it comes to providing NSOs with support on event communications. Look at them in two parts. Number one is that challenges you'd expect from the NSO side and possible challenges from you as a consultant. From the NSO side, one of the most common things or rather we've seen is some NSOs may not really have a clear understanding of what requests, of what the need really is. So you find, you know, requests coming in that are really quote unquote half-baked. So it becomes very difficult for you to really understand what, you know, what the NSO really needs. And that's why it's important that, you know, the first meeting you hold with the NSOs, you take it as an opportunity to clarify, you know, the needs from the NSO, and so that you get into an agreement on what exactly is the need that the request needs to solve. And then sometimes you may schedule, you know, service delivery activities with NSOs, and the people you expect to be there are not there. I know that can be very frustrating. For instance, like you agreed with an NSO, you're going to meet at this time to go through their requests or to look at, you know, to review some work that has been done, and then nobody shows up. You know, that not only affects your schedule as a consultant, but it's also frustrating. So it's important that from the onset, there is a very strong sense of commitment from the leadership of the NSO and those that are involved in the delivery of the request. And then, of course, you may also encounter delays in providing feedback. So let's say you ask the NSO for certain information by a certain day and that does not come. So that's also a possibility. And the greatest challenge And this is something that I've particularly encountered a lot, is that NSOs are very excited when it comes to receiving the service, but they are not so excited when it comes to reporting about the service. So there we really need a little bit of a push to get them to complete the service report on the, on the platform, as well as the evaluation and the sharing of their experience. As a consultant, some of the challenges that NSOs have come back to us with, on the part of the consultant is particularly on the delays in approving and closing services. So for instance, a request comes through, and as a consultant, it's your role to review that service and move it to the next stage. So sometimes we encounter some delays here, and this can cause the NSOs to lose motivation. As well as in certain cases, we also have consultants being unavailable to to attend to NSO requests. So you agree with an NSO about an activity, and then for one reason or another, you don't show up. And I think here it's very important that you keep the NSO informed about any changes in your availability, so that you can collectively readjust the timelines, as well as when it comes to providing feedback requested by NSOs. And then the last thing here is that as consultants, we are representatives of the movement, and it's upon us to as we say, to do our best. So even when providing support, I think we need to really give out our best and provide quality support to the NSO, something that even you as a consultant, you look back and you're proud of that. Yes, I was able to assist the NSOs in delivering that request. And then some of the general feedback we've also received around services in this area is one big one is language. For instance, you receive a request from let's say a French-speaking NSO, and you're the only consultant available and you're an English speaker, for example. So finding ways to maneuver that language challenge is something that has come up quite often. And in most cases, what we do in such a situation is that if a consultant is challenged in that manner, we can find somebody to provide that language support. And then we've also received feedback around some challenges, particularly when we are working across time zones. It's always very difficult to find common times where both you as a consultant and the NSO concerned NSO leadership are available to to address the request. So that's always something that we need to keep at the back of our minds, that sometimes we may be required to make concessions in terms of availability. And then the third thing that has also come up, this is more of a system thing as opposed to being on the consultant or the NSO side, is the requirements of the service platform. I know it's a really once a service goes onto the platform, then we must complete all those steps. And some NSOs have been complaining that it's a little cumbersome, like you have to, once you do something, you have to put all these little things into the platform. But again, that's what we have currently. And I think we just need to find ways of of navigating through the requirements of the platform, because ultimately that's what gives us visibility about the work that, or rather the support that we are providing to NSO. So one thing I always encourage consultants here to do is to integrate some of these things within the service delivery period. So for instance, if you require NSOs to complete a report or to complete an evaluation, before you actually get to to complete the provision of the the service, or in your last meeting with the NSO, you can actually have them do that, like complete the service report and the evaluation and the experience, so that you don't have to follow them later on when you have already finalized your part. And feedback we've received from consultants offering support in this area. Okay, so maybe before, the next thing was for us to go into a case study, but maybe before we go there, do we have any questions? Anyone with a question or a comment, or would like to make an input to this? What we've talked about so far? Any reflections? Okay. There seems to be none. So I see we are five or yeah. So the next thing is that maybe we can go into a case study, and this I would wish to let you engage on this. So Mercy and myself will just be here listening to your discussions on or how you approach this, and it's a case that we are hoping will give you an opportunity to sort of discuss through a possible request that could come through from the NSOs, and it's actually here, and yeah, so we which I know you may have already encountered in your previous sessions, but you have a challenge here. So the challenge is that ahead of the upcoming general elections next year, the Rainbow Land Guide and Scout organization is planning a national youth conference in May 2024. The event is expected to bring together at least 3,000 young people, youth organizations, media, and strategic partners from all over the country to discuss and come up with Rainbow Land Youth Declaration that will carry the voice and demands of young people on critical issues facing the country towards the national leaders who are vying for election. They also want to use this event to showcase the different programs they are running as part of the contribution to the development of young people and addressing the challenges facing the country. Hence, greatly rely on partnerships and volunteers. So your task is this. They have approached, reach out to WASM with a request for support in the development and execution of an events communication plan. As the consultant assigned to deliver this request proposed one goal, 3 objectives, and several activities under each objective you will include in the event communications plan. So this is a sample request, that could come from any NSO. So we'd like that for the next in the next 15 or so minutes, you treat this as a breakout room. You treat this meeting as a breakout room, and would like you to engage in this, and as a team, come up with a way of which you're going to address this request from the Rainbow Land Guide and Scout organization. Is that clear? Or anyone with any question? I see Shiko giving a thumbs up. Okay, Raquel has also given a thumbs up. So, okay, so as a team, and this team now is the team of consultants here is composed of JMG, Julia, Raquel, Sharif, and Shiko. So the five of you, I'd like you to take the next 15 or so minutes to discuss this and come up with how you're going to address it. So over to you guys. The floor is yours. So myself and Marcy are going to take a back seat and let you guys to have a discussion on this. And then once you're done, then we'll come back and offer some reflections, take some reflections about the whole exercise.
JM says he's not fluent in in English. He has posted in the chat that he's not fluent in English.
Well, now that's a challenge that the team needs to work around. But I know JM can speak some English, so it's not too bad. Okay,
it can work.
So over to you guys. Over to you guys.
So let me get this one straight. So our goal is to propose another goal than the one they proposed, I think, because it is a youth conference. I think, and I might be wrong, that youth empowerment can be a goal for this conference. I mean, it's clearly, the conference is clearly having its own goal to support some kind of general elections, but I'm not sure if this is reflected on youth that much. I don't know.
So just a clarification. So whatever is on the left side, the challenge is what the NSO has submitted in the WASM services platform. That's what they want to do. Okay. So your task as consultants is to help them with communications around that event. Okay. And what they want is you to help them with is an events communication plan. Okay. So as a team of consultants, you need to propose, ideally you'd be working with them, but here you need to propose a goal, a communication goal, a communication objectives, and communication activities that you can help them to, to implement, to support communications for that event that they are planning to organize. I hope that makes it clearer.
Hi, it's Raquel here. So I think that one goal, actually, this is it seems to be a very complex event because you have to bring in the young people, you have to bring in youth organizations, media, strategic partners, and at the same time, you have an outcome, which is the youth declaration that needs to be, let's put this way, showcased in a very formal way, because it's going to carry the voice and the demands of the young people to the, I assume it's politicians who are being voted, right? So it has to be shown in a very formal way, and with a way that that is, I mean, that has it has a weight of the youth people in Rainbow Land. So I think the goal that I would propose is to make this event so relevant that everybody is talking about it, but mainly the people who are mainly the people who are the big decision makers of the country. So it doesn't matter if it brings, I don't know, 3 million people, 3 million young people, 3 million young youth organizations, if it doesn't mean, and if it's not relevant to the national leaders. So I think the goal would be, of course, bringing all these people, but the one goal would be make this youth declaration so relevant that no one can ignore it in a way. I don't know if you guys agree.
Okay, thank you, Raquel. Do we have more goals from the other participants? Please feel free.
If I may.
Sure.
So from my side, the goal will be to effectively communicate the objective, significance, and outcomes of the youth conference and mobilize support and participation and raise awareness among the target audience. That could be the goal for that could be the communication goal for the conference. And if I talk about the objective that was mentioned in the task, that could be that create awareness about the National Youth Conference and its objectives that was initially set by the organizing committee. And then second objective could be mobilizing active participation from youth organization and young individuals from different part of the country. And definitely we are talking about the country, right? As it is an NSO. And then the objective 3 would be like securing strategic partnership and volunteers to support the event and support the communication objective. As a consultant, we cannot do all the tasks, or we cannot actually implement the whole communication plan alone. So we need volunteers and we need support from the NSO. And if we can create a support group from the NSO, that will be very helpful because they will understand the situation very easily. They will understand the context very easily. They can guide us time to time. And it will be very much easier if we get this type of support from the NSO. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharif. We are free to continue discussing the goals. Let's just be.
Sure.
I agree with Sharif that the volunteers are really important, and mobilizing the youth organizations as well. So, sometimes here in, I don't know in other countries, but sometimes here in Brazil, you have to rely a lot on who knows who inside an organization. So instead of having I'm not talking only about scouting, I'm talking in general. So sometimes you have to be, you don't have like an institution relating or communicating with another institution. You have people within the organizations talking to each other. So that's a little bit hard sometimes because you have to rely on just other people. So trying to make attracting these strategic partners in a more formal way with like letters, invitations, and this kind of formal invitations, even like paper invitations, you know, usually also help bring this weight that I was talking about, that making everything more relevant, instead of just to people, me and Sharif, for example, you know, inviting each other to each other's conferences or something like that. So for me, that's one activity that seems really important. Having these formal invitations, as well as having a plan for the volunteers, how to gather volunteers, show them what they're gaining from that. Sometimes depending on the country, that could be considered as an internship. So formally, they would have something in their resume. So when you have a lot of volunteers, you sometimes have even if they're not experts on communications, but if you have a lot of volunteers and you have time for training them, it's really worth it, because they usually are very eager to work on the event. So that's really interesting to have a plan to gather them.
Yeah, let's the discussion continue. We have about 7 minutes. Remember
Okay,
that
so I
ultimately,
Yeah,
go on.
go ahead. No,
Yeah,
go ahead.
just reminding you that ultimately you need to come up with a goal, objectives, and some activities to to propose to the NSOs.
Yeah, that was exactly what I'm gonna say. So I think we have a one goal right now. Not sure if we have the objectives set. The objectives, I mean, we have at least one or two. But for the activities, I also think that we should focus on useful and engaging activities, and maybe some energetic ones too, because we're talking about youth. And even though the goal or the objectives also can be a little bit strict or straightforward or official, if I might say, but also executing them should not be the same, I think. And this is one of the challenges we are actually having at the next World Cup conference, because it's not youth oriented anymore without the youth forum this time around. So this actually would be so helpful to try to brainstorm some useful engaging activities.
I see JM is also typing on the chat, so maybe you could also consider his inputs on the chat.
Oh,
And you 4 minutes.
JMG is talking about that we should be able, there we go, thank you, should be able to respond to the people, to young people's needs following some technical guidelines. And yeah, I agree with that. And also, one thing that we can actually communicate to the media is that how the conference is giving young people their voice, how it's bringing together different voices to come up with this very important youth declaration, talking about the importance for young people around the country, not only the people who are participating in that, what's the objective to the national of coming up with this document and giving it to the national leaders. And this would bring relevance to the that would be bring the relevance to the sorry, to the media. Talking about that towards media relations specifically, as one of the objectives of the event is to showcase the different programs they're running. It would be very important in talking about media and to make this to make booths or stands or show these different programs in a very physical way, with videos, photographs, people that journalists can interview. Because if you only have like a booth and some banners, that's not very interesting for television or for video. So when you have, if you have examples to show, like physical things to show, I don't know. Oh, we are used to, one program that we have is to, I don't know, bring solar panels to people. If you have like the actual solar panel, if you have something like that, things that you can actually show that people can actually see and touch, that's more media friendly in a way.
Yeah, I agree, and I totally agree, especially on the area of using media and photos, because after all, we want to convince scout leaders or the head of the NSOs to send their youth, or technically like really the youth people representing their countries. So having this communication plan in the part of the pre-conference, as Nelson was mentioning, having all the communication that is before the conference, targeting youth, might give the NSO heads some kind of challenge that we will not be able to take part of this conference unless we have some youth representations. The same thing we are trying to do nowadays is to use as much photos of youth engaging for the World Scout Conference publications and posts and so on. And this might give them an indirect mention that we need to include youth as much as possible. Also, we were thinking of using lots of new technologies that will end up be used by youth. For instance, QR codes, a good application for the conference, using the new social media like the TikTok and Instagram. This also might help in the communication part to encourage youth to, or encourage leaders to send youth to this conference.
Okay, your time is up. And yeah, I think this was a reflection of a real scenario you might experience. So Marcy, would you quickly take us through? I know we have about 12 minutes, so could you quickly take us through a quick debrief of this, and then we proceed to wrap up.
To start with, great job to all of you. It's been very interesting to listen through and to also just appreciate that we have great minds in here. So some of the points that did come through on the go, I think, was to make the event relevant so that no one ignores it. So we have to be very clear on the goal. A very good contribution. I'll also bring out something I think that came out, effectively communicates the event to create awareness on the Rainbow Land elections. And to also what came out was the seeking of volunteers to execute the communication plan. And I think that's very important, especially that there is a mention actually, that they do not have adequate resources to organize this event. And so it was quite good to hear this coming up, that we seek volunteers to execute the communication plan, but to also train them where need be. And then we also noted utilizing the volunteers, training them, and also the fact that they are eager to deliver. So these are some of the points that came out through the engagement in the breakout. So I think it was interesting because each of the points actually contributes to the successful communication of an event. And I think going forward, I will give to Nelson.
Thank you, Mercy. And I also just picked a few reflections. And number one is hearing the discussions and you know, the contributions that are coming from each one of you. One thing that is really critical in a situation like this is, you know, building consensus within the team of stakeholders that you're working with. Assuming that here you are the consultant and you're meeting the NSO and you need to, you know, bring all their minds together to agree on, you know, what becomes the goal or the objectives of the communications for the event. I think that's a really critical skill that as a consultant you really need to have, to pull people together and, you know, help everyone focus towards something very common. And as you may have also realized, sometimes it's requests are always not very straightforward. And, you know, so you really need to be very discerning to be able to pick out what are the key elements, you know, that need to go into, you know, into the plan that you're helping the NSO to develop. The other thing that came out was some of the considerations that you really have to make when you know, offering support to NSOs in this area. And I particularly liked some contributions where you know, people are really stressing out the fact that it's an event for young people, and so everything needs to look youthful, and you know, the youth voice needs to be amplified. I think that's really important. So you look at the event that you have, and then you see what aspects of that event you really need to give prominence to. And then there is the fact that whatever solutions or proposals you make to the NSO as a consultant need to align, you know, with the challenge that the NSO, you know, really wants to address, because there are so many possibilities of how to deliver an event communications, but every event is unique, and so you need to tailor, you know, whatever solutions you propose to the NSOs to fit the event that they are organizing. And ultimately, I think for me, this was just an example for you in terms of how you will be required as a consultant, you know, to help translate requests from NSO into concrete, you know, service proposals that you can then discuss with them to, you know, before it's agreed and delivered on. So I hope that this gave you an you know, an idea, but I would greatly encourage you to take this up as your take-home assignment, maybe as an individual, and try and see or challenge yourself that if you got, you know, this request as a consultant, as an individual consultant, how would you really go about it? So that's something that we can leave you with, you know, to look through. And yeah, maybe moving on swiftly, because we have you know, very few moments remaining. There are a number of resources that you can access as a consultant. And I've just listed here some of them, and we are going to share this presentation with you so that you can explore them. We have some documents that can provide you guidance. We have some previous workshop recordings, but we also have stories about event service requests that have been delivered. You remember the one I shared with you about Uganda? There's a story about the request itself, and there's a story about how that request actually, what was the result of the delivery of that request. So you can be able to see the support you provide versus, the outcomes that is realized out of that support. And our call to action to you is to take your time as consultants to explore some of the resources that are available, so that you can, better prepare yourself for such requests, but also, take time to understand NSO needs whenever you get a request to support. And then as consultants, you're also ambassadors of WASM. So help us to promote WASM services and encourage NSOs to submit their requests on the platform. Also, by you signing up as a consultant, you are making a personal commitment to be available to provide requests whenever they are assigned to you. And this is something that we would wish that you keep on your honor. And then, of course, it's also important that when you're assigned a service, you keep your service lead updated. And whenever you need support, please feel free to reach out, and that support can be provided to you. Other than that, thank you very much. But we can still be able to take a couple of questions before we wrap this up. So the floor is open for anyone who may wish to ask a question or two, and then we can respond. Feel free to just shout it out.
If I may, I have a small
Yes.
question about the way consultancy goes with such tasks, because it's not much of a technical task. I mean, if an NSO reached a consultant or service leaders about, let's say, I don't know, having a social media campaign or doing a video for a certain event or so on. This is something technical that I think anyone of us can do, but in the case of events, it's not always something that all of the consultants would be have done it before. I mean, speaking of the example we just had, some consultants may have not attended any youth conferences before, maybe for the educational congress. You know what I mean. It's more of getting to know the event so you can work on the communication plan with the NSO. So how usually this is treated, Mercy, if possible. I think Nelson have left the building. So Mercy, if you have something to say about this.
Okay, on the spot. Okay, so if I've heard you clearly, so I don't know, maybe just in brief, just repeat that, just in brief, brief, sorry.
It's okay. I was talking about the consultant. If he or she doesn't have knowledge of this particular event that he was assigned or she was assigned to help with, what can be done.
Okay, so usually when there's an event or a consultancy that has been requested, to start with, there's communication that is made beforehand, and naturally the consultant will start research on that particular program or that particular event to help out. But we also have our resource. Like in Africa, we have our regional office, which is in Kenya. We have a desk officer, we have Nelson, that a consultant can easily reach out to for information. But also, since the requests can be at different levels, you can also be called at international level. You still reach out to the other organizers to make sure that you are abreast with whatever task that you've been given, as well as for you to understand the particular event that you're supposed to participate in organizing or putting in an input as a consultant. But also very important for a consultant is to research. Immediately something gets to your desk, I know sometimes you can be pressed for time, but research, and where you don't understand, you reach out to the other team members, whether it's a regional level or even at WUSIM level, where you can be assisted. I hope I've answered that.
Yeah, thank you, Mercy, for that. And sorry, again, I got disconnected and I have to switch to my phone. But I didn't fully get the question, but maybe, Shiko, one thing I could mention is that you have the support centers, you have the WASM communications team to always reach out to in case you need support with any particular request. But also importantly, we have the members, the WASM data portal, which also offers you some insights about NSOs to which that you've been assigned particular requests. And if it's of any help, I can share with you a service proposal, an event communication service proposal I did to an NSO that maybe could help to give you a bit more insights into how such a request would be executed. Sorry, that may have been random, but I hope it helps. And with that, I think we have come to the end. We don't want to eat into the time for the other sessions. So thank you very much for your time. And we'll now hand it over back
Nelson,
to
there is a question in the chat box. Apologies,
Okay.
Nelson, there's a question in the chat box, which is when you work on events communications, do you usually need help from consultants from other areas, as communications touches pretty much all the areas?
I think the answer
Okay.
to that
So
would be that, yeah. The answer to that, I think, would be that first is the understanding that event communications is not standalone. It's part of the broad framework of organizing and delivery of the event. So the NSO may need to put you in touch with the other people who are leading different aspects of the event, so that you're also able to understand the needs. For instance, if it's from a program perspective, what are the communication needs from the program? If it's logistics, what are the communication needs for logistics? So that whatever event communication plan you come up with is very holistic and covers all aspects of communication required for the event. Okay. Good. So thank you very much. And back to you, Maya. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson. Thank you, Mercy. It was really, really useful to hear from you and to learn from your experiences as the most experienced people on the who've dealt with service requests in this particular area. Now, I don't know if everybody, it's been over an hour. How do people feel about having a short break? I know Julie, you've just joined, but Raquel, Jean-Marie, Chico, do you need 5 minutes just to get a drink or? Yeah, okay, thumbs up. So in about 5 minutes, we'll come back. All right, see you guys in 5. recording. So hello, and again, everyone, thank you so much for joining for the second half of the WASM Consultants training. So this bit will be on public and media relations. And for those, I'm sure everybody knows me, but just in case they don't, I'm Maya, and I work for WASM based in Kuala Lumpur, and I'm a manager for communications, and I've been the one sending you emails and Slack messages. And I am joined by the wonderful Farah, who is very familiar with WASM. She used to be with us too in Kuala Lumpur. She's still in Kuala Lumpur, but now she's with the European office as a communications officer for UACT. And she's just been working on the WeAct forum, which just finished over in Poland with Julia. So she is incredibly well placed to take us through this session on public and media communication. So I will just start sharing my screen so you can see our presentation. Okay, I hope everybody can see that. Yep, all good. Okay, so oops. First off, before we get into the presentation, I just wanted to say that if anybody has any questions at all during this session, to please, put your questions in the chat. As we go along, we're going to be reserving some time at the end for Q&A, but sometimes the inspiration, it strikes in the middle. So do feel free to go ahead and pop those questions, and we'll be sure to answer them at the end. So the first question in any presentation: why is this topic important? So why, in this instance, is public and media relations important? And I'm looking to you guys, to my audience, for some ideas and some inspiration. We're all communications experts here, so this should be a pretty easy one for you. But from your perspective, whether you're new or whether you're an old hand at PR and media relations, what for you is the rationale behind why this topic is so important? You can either put something in the chat if you want, or you can unmute yourself. Whatever you feel most comfortable with. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds just to think. And don't forget, this can be taken from many angles. So whatever kind of pops up into your head. There's also a little hint with the photo of an idea. So Julia's written awareness to have relevance in key issues. Yes, exactly. That is a really, really big part of this. Yes, to raise awareness of what it is that we're trying to do. Any other ideas? Oh, I've just accidentally clicked on, so I've spoiled it for everybody. This is a non-exclusive list. This is, sorry, non-exhaustive list. There are plenty of other things that you could also include in this list, but this is just some ideas. So the first one is enhances public perception and reputation. So thinking back to your session last week on content creation and social media, at the crux of it, the argument was, what are we selling? So this is the same kind of thing. It's like, for us, we're selling Scout's mission, the goals, activities, the programs, all together, it's making up the image, the brand of Scouting, not just visually, but emotionally, the experience that it brings to people. So for us, we can use public and media relations to shape public perspective of Scouting. For us, it's important, obviously, to maintain a public image and brand. And that's why I included this picture, I don't know which way I'm pointing actually, of the part of the British royal family. I'm sure these are all very recognizable faces. This picture is actually taken from Hello magazine. It was something that Scouts UK highlighted with us. So it's a British magazine called Hello, and the royal family took part in some activities for Scouting, obviously very heavily involved. Your opinions aside of the British royal family, pro or negative, you can obviously see that it's obviously like a very good thing to have them and their brand associated with us and our brand. It just automatically connects with people in many different ways. We can also use, in terms of public perception and reputation, we can also use it to challenge some stereotypes. Scouting is obviously a very old movement. Sometimes, there are some outdated perceptions of Scouting. So we can use public and media relations to be able to, update And we should be constantly updating our image and how the public sees us. And we can have, to a certain extent, control over that narrative. We can also use public and media relations to promote Scouting values and programs. So we can use media coverage to raise awareness of programs and initiatives that we're running. We can use it to gain and retain members, obviously. So effective PR and media relations, it can attract new members by reaching larger audiences. Public media exposure can obviously help in retaining existing members and engaging with the community, which is obviously a core part of what we do. For advocacy and partnership, it supports Scouting's advocacy efforts. For example, we can showcase existing partnerships with external organizations and what we're doing to achieve certain goals and missions. And by doing so, we offer a bit of transparency. And as with the previous point with regards to members, it can also help keep and attract new members. And outside of partnerships with external organizations, you can also have partnerships with media organizations, and this can also help amplify Scouts' voice on social issues. Now, before we dive too deep into this presentation, I wanted to explore some kind of key terms with you just to make sure we're on the same page, particularly as we start to explore things like media plans and media strategies. And I wanted to get from the group an understanding of where you are in terms of, oh, and I'm sorry, I've just seen the messages in the chat to get your message spread, and to, my French unfortunately is not good enough, something about image, but thank you. So yeah, sorry, oops, no, go back, you've spoiled it. So I wanted to ask the group, what is the difference between earned, owed, and paid media? Do you use those terms? Do you know what the difference is between them? Can we have some ideas either in the chat or by, unmuting yourself as to what is the difference between those three concepts? Earned media, owned media, and paid media. I know you got a little peek. I see something in the chat from Jean-Marie. I don't know, Co, if you're able to translate that for us. Ah, yes. Yes. Okay. So I can go through those terms. Yes, we do use the term organic for a certain type of media, but I'll just go through those terms. So earned media is the coverage or promotion of your brand that you haven't paid for or created yourself. So you can think of this in a way as a form of pure journalism. It's what we tend to think of when we think of media strategies, and it's what most people think of as well. They think of earned media. It's a very effective form of media, but it's also the toughest to get because there's a lot of competition, not least by the fact that media rooms have been gutted in recent years, particularly local newsrooms. Around this presentation, we'll be talking quite a lot about earned media, but we also wanted to encourage you to think about public and media relations as a combination of things, hence why, earned, owned, and paid media. So the next one, owned media. These are channels that your organization owns. So websites, social media, newsletters are also included. I think one of these things that's a lot of people forget sometimes is that newsletters can be a form of promotion and advertisement. So I started off life in the media, and I used to be on the mailing list for a lot of organizations, and I used to get a lot of information that way. And turning these channels into effective, and very good sources of information for media contacts to find out what an NSO is doing, that can be very valuable. And the last one is paid media. It's pretty self-explanatory. You pay for it. So external media that involves a paid advert. Now, this is, as it says, it's among the least trusted among audiences because I'm sure a lot of you see something that is promoted or paid for or sponsored on your feed, and I tend to just sort of swipe up and keep going. But at the same time, it can be tailored to look less like a traditional ad. It can also be, it can be useful because it can be targeted to specific groups, specific geographies, specific demographics. And if you want to know more about earned media and how it can be used to reach new audiences, there was a really good workshop that was conducted by Scouts UK, who also provided that the photograph of the royal family and their efforts to get earned media for that. So with Scouts UK, though, just to let you know, they benefit a lot from the fact that they have quite an extensive team. For an NSO, they have a lot of dedicated people who deal specifically with media and public relations. This is often a rarity for NSOs, and I wouldn't, bet on the fact that this is like a standard practice across all NSOs. And this point links into this next slide, which is sort of key challenges for NSOs. You will find as you are dealing with NSOs that a lot of them struggle with things like limited resources, that's funding and people power. NSOs, they often operate within limited budgets, staffing, resources, and that makes it challenging to invest in comprehensive public and media relations teams and strategies, the sort of ideal scenario that you would like to see. Many NSOs, they don't have a dedicated media person, and this role is often tagged with other roles. So you will perhaps be doing media relations, but you'll also be doing programs, or also be doing IT. This is a very kind of common thing to happen. Also, with regards to challenges, we can often find as a nonprofit, as I'm sure you all know, there can be limited media interest and a lot of competition from other nonprofits. Nowadays, there are fewer and fewer journalists specializing in nonprofits, and so media outlets will often prioritize stories that generate higher revenue or higher readership, which can result in limited interest in nonprofits. Nonprofits like Scouting, we may struggle to position our stories as newsworthy or relevant in the media landscape. That said, Scouting does benefit from having a really, really good brand that most people know. And so we don't have to convince people as to exactly who we are. People already know who we are. It's now getting to the next stage, which is being able to get our stories out there. Sometimes we may struggle with staying relevant and engaging. We increasingly deal with a fragmented audience, particularly with the rise of social media. And from what I understand, this is only going to get more and more fragmented. More channels obviously means less influence. As a result, nonprofits, we need to be continually finding innovative ways to engage with our target audiences and stay relevant amid challenging societal trends and interests, particularly as Scouting, because our youth is our major target audience, and they will have evolving and changing needs all the time. Capturing and maintaining the attention of supporters, of partners, and volunteers, it requires constant creativity and adaptability. Another challenge that we face is being able to demonstrate tangible and measurable impact. Now, Farah is going to go into this in more detail later on, but this, as you know, can be, like I'm sure you all know, can be a bit of a challenge. We have to be able to prove that what we've done is tangible and measurable, and that can often be quite difficult. So a lot of our work, maybe also looking at aspects of identifying like appropriate matrices and evaluation methods to be able to gauge the effectiveness of our strategies and the effort that NSOs put into them. Crisis management is also a big one. Nonprofits, as I'm sure we all know, we're not immune to crises or controversies, and they can damage our reputation. So there is a need to respond to any crises swiftly and transparency and effectively. And that often requires careful planning and strong communication skills and the ability to mitigate potential harm to reputations. Now, this will also be something, I'm really glad that I have Farah here, because this is also something that is an area of expertise for her, and she will be able to go into in-depth detail into this. And I think on that note, I'm going to pass the floor over to her. Farah, do you want me to keep sharing my screen, or?
Yes, I think
Okay.
you do that. Okay, but then I will need you to just enable me to share my screen at some point, because I have two resources to just walk through. Thank you. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you, Maya, for that. And hi, everyone. It's nice to see some familiar faces and names. Okay, I'm going to take you through some things that you, in a position of a consultant, can take the NSO through, and some things you can help the NSO to put together and establish. And building on one of the challenges that Maya mentioned is the limited resources. And sometimes you don't, NSOs, depending on their size, will not necessarily have a media officer or even a dedicated communications person. So I think they would benefit, they really benefit from a consultant in this to help them at least put these fundamental things in place. So one of the things that you can work with the NSO on developing is a media plan. Okay, and this is probably this is the first step that you would take in sitting together with the NSO, identifying what is the target audience, what is more specifically, who is their external audience. So to kind of do like an audience mapping on their external audiences, since we are talking about public relations and media. So that's mainly the audience we're focusing on in this session. So this would be like could be from parents of scouts to potential new members that will join, or existing donors, or even new donors and funding that they want to get in, or the general public. So doing an audience mapping exercise with the NSO is a really good start, because this is how it helps you start big and you narrow down into what channels, where is this audience found. So the second one is identify the relevant channels. So what is this audience consuming? Where are they found? What channels are they on? What television shows are they more likely to be tuned into, that you can also tap into that and create those relationships to maybe feature the NSO's work on there. So find out where this audience is found, where are they easily reached, so you don't waste your time or other journalists' time in reaching out to wasting your resources and wasting their time and reaching out to really irrelevant networks and outlets. And we'll touch on that afterwards. And then identify also key media moments for the year. Okay. I think let's stay on the first one. Sorry, Maya. Thank you. Yeah, okay. So identifying key media moments of the year, and this is where you can just map out, there's different international days that usually media would find that as an easy hook to just take, whether you are pitching a press release to them or launching, the NSO's launching something new, or they're having an event that maybe they would like to invite media for. So identify some key moments to help the NSO in their own planning and where they can really capitalize on grabbing that media attention, because they would most likely find challenges in doing so. So media moments like this, the international days, are a good idea to just maximize. Here is where you can also assist and be of really added value to develop a media kit for NSOs. I don't think that many NSOs have a media kit. Not many organizations would have even a media kit that is just there. So this is really something that's important to have. It can be in different forms. It can be in a PDF form. It can be something that lives on the website of the NSO. And this is where you want to make it as easy as possible for journalists to have everything all in one place. Instead of doing their research on their own, trying to get the right information. And this is where also the NSO ensures that their factual and accurate information is presented to the journalists when they are the ones who develop this media kit and have all these resources in one place. So it includes things, right, like the details about the NSO, when the NSO was established in the country, how many members they have, some bios of their leadership, and maybe these are spokespeople that the media might be interested in interviewing. The media kit would also have logos of the NSO or other assets, photos from their activities, any previous press releases or media coverage, any awards or recognitions that they've had, and a contact information for if the media want to get in touch. So this is best I see it as best to be a thing that is living on their website, but of course, given the limited resources, you would have to also just assist the NSO in developing this as a standalone document that they can share with media when they do any outreach. Maya, I want to share here my screen. Oh, perfect, I can, okay. So I'm going to just walk you through a little template I have. Okay, and there's so many tools out there that you can use. This one is like a subscription, but you can also create it on your own. I think you see it, right? Okay, perfect. So this is just a sample of a media kit. I tried to make it into a template, and I will share this on the Slack channel so you can copy a similar format. I used a tool called Extensio, and they have multiple templates that are very useful, especially in communications. And I happened to find a media kit there, so this was pretty helpful. So here's where you would give, here the logo of the NSO, but here we'd give a little bit of a background about the organization. Some things here to fill in is when did they start in the country, the location, membership size, who's the contact, and this is for journalists to just see this right up front. You really just want to make this as easy as possible for them. And then some previous press releases that may have covered the NSO's work. And here again, like some key features, maybe what are some initiatives that the NSO is really good at, some milestones that they have, and this is where you can also put this here. So you think of it as everything you would want the media to know and put it into their own coverage. Okay. Also, you don't need to maybe use every single section of this, but this is a very comprehensive version of a media kit. Okay, some backstory. And here also it helps to show some demographics. I just split it up this way for you, but it can be, you can divide it into boys and girls. I just did it according to age group and different like Cub Scouts, Rover Scouts, and how many volunteers are part of the NSO. So you can feel free to play around with the demographics. And here are some mentions that the NSO has been featured in. This is a nice section to put together and have it there with all the links there. You're really needing to think that you are spoon feeding a journalist all of this, because it does work in our benefits to have that coverage. So you really need to have them just take all the information in one place, as detailed as possible, all the links available. And media assets would be logos, photos. And again, this is a fancier version of a media kit, but if you manage to do that, that's fantastic. And then some like NSO leadership, let's say a little bit of a background on who the media can be interested in interviewing. So I put together the NSO president or international commissioner or whoever would be a relevant contact. And then again, for press inquiry, who to contact, different people, and the NSO's website. So yes, this is a sample of a media kit. I will share it in the Slack channel so you can follow a similar format. And if I can have the presentation again, please. Okay, and this is also something to be continuously updated by the NSO. There are different things going on, different memberships changing. So it's really good, I think, on maybe a quarterly basis for you to advise the NSO to update their media kits. And if it's not something that is living online on their website, to always have that as a PDF that is sent to any media outreach, regardless of what form of that media. Okay, next slide. Okay, and other assistance that they would need from you and some guidance is where to build relationships. And this is really, really key. I would say identifying journalists and knowing them, really know what they talk about, what their interests are, what are their positions on certain things. And this you can find from the website, from a journalist's Twitter accounts, really follow what kind of material they've been producing, so you know to make your target, like when you talk to the journalist, to have that as a personalized approach with the journalist, that you know who you're talking to. And so, yeah, like there's nothing that journalists would hate more than just receiving a generic, hi, I'm attaching a press release, can you please publish this? That would guarantee you to go straight into their deleted files. But to try to make things really personal, writing their names in the subject line of, I really enjoyed reading your last piece of work about this and this and that. Maybe this would benefit you. So yeah, just to try to make that personal, really show them that you've put that effort. Then identifying, part of building relationships is also identifying with the NSO what kind of television, radio shows, magazines might be relevant for their in that niche. Maybe a show that is tied to like community development, and they show different success stories around the city, is where you can pitch to that network and want to get the NSO some placement and some coverage from there. So identifying different topics that different media specialize in is really important as well. And create the NSO media list. I will share this in a little bit. The NSO media list would be your contact database. So this is where it would be obviously a continuously updated table that has all the contacts in one place for the NSO to tap into and reach and use for their pitches. Customizing their pitches also, as I said, to make it personal with the journalists. And from studies, it's been shown that sending any invitations or press releases to media is best to be done from Monday afternoon to Thursday mornings. And this is for countries that have a weekend of Saturday, Sunday, because this guarantees that the journalists can pick up the piece on a Thursday and publish it on their Friday. Yeah, so this is some background research that was shown from Mondays to Thursdays are good days to pitch to the media. And by building relationships, also engage influential supporters. And this means influential partners. Try to also, if the NSO has a big partner, let's say I'm now on the project that is funded by UNICEF. And a lot of these NSOs, their biggest partner is UNICEF. And this is where you can work with the NSO to tag along with UNICEF's coverage as well. And this helps both the NSO and the partner get that coverage. Also engage in, open their eyes to influencer marketing and how they can probably reach out to some influencers that are known in this field and cover certain topics that they can be affiliated with. And I will just share, okay, Maya, can I share this, the media list, please? Okay, so I'm just going to share this here. Just a sample media list template, the database, and you'd want it to have, yes, just to categorize the publication or outlet, so first name, last, the names of the journalist here, what their role is, what their topic is. And this is actually really beneficial because you can filter depending on what you're pitching to the media. So if you're pitching a story about, let's say, Jota Jyoti, you'd want maybe also to include some of the maybe tech writers, if we're talking about online. The NSO is really doing something big online for scouts. So just helps you to filter this, the city emails, their Twitter, LinkedIn, of course, all their relevant contact details and some links. And then notes here to also always continue to update if this journalist moved somewhere else or blah, blah, blah. So this, yeah, you can provide this with the NSO. And I'm gonna stop sharing, but I'll share this on the Slack channel too. Okay, and next. Okay, and also leveraging on on social media platforms. So when you're working with the NSO to strengthen their media and PR, you want to also align with their social media strategy. So what do they have planned to go out, and where can you leverage traditional media alongside the social media platforms? And also this is where you would learn the most about journalists by tapping into their social media platforms and always make sure you have a compelling story to tell, whether that is on their social channels or when you're reaching out to media. And number 5 is measure the success. So this is also a practice that you would get the NSO to get into. And usually people don't skip this step when it's actually really important, because most often than not, the stories do not get picked up. And you want to sit and assess and see what didn't work. Was it the timing? Was there a big event happening in the country that media were caught up with that and nobody picked up the story, or is it something in your control? So this is a really important step to take after every time that you do the media outreach as well. And sometimes some things work and you want to repeat them and some didn't. It's also helpful to talk to journalists. So if the media has already some contacts there, it would be beneficial for them to have these discussions with journalists and really understand what they want. And next. Okay, and some of these things we've mentioned, and this is what do the media want, and what will catch their attention, what are they looking for? First is timely content. So anything that's happening that's relevant, that you see they are writing about already. It could be something like, let's say, a natural disaster, and the NSO has been immediately there responding to the needs of the affected communities. And this is something where you can actually work with the NSO to develop a story to get the coverage of that. These are young scouts, all putting in these efforts to help the people in need. This is very timely content. It'd be more easy for the media to pick it up. Make it personalized and relevant to their audience. Again, write in the email, make it a very personal one, show them you put the effort in reading their material or watching their material or their network. And showing them why this would be relevant to their audience as a journalist. Yeah, so number 3 is add value in your pitch. And here you're pitching something, but you want to give them something also like, oh, I would also, if you're interested, you can get an interview with the Secretary General of the NSO, or someone who's in charge of the program you're writing about, to add like a little value for them, that they can have this interview, or they can interview this scout or something, which can be more appealing to them to cover the story. And be specific, don't waste their time. So this also, by being specific in the emails or outreach to the media, it's also helpful if you're attaching a press release. So what I would do is attach the press release, but also put it in the body of the email. So just for them to really not miss that. But maybe write a couple of bullet points in that email, summarizing what's there and the key takeaways that they can just, that would catch their attention. So just be specific. Yes, we do not want to waste our time, and always follow up if you don't hear back, but not the next day. 2 to 3 days later would be a good time to just follow up and send that reminder. Okay, and then we touched on this earlier that Maya mentioned, crisis management. And here's where it's really important, the point of building relationships. So when the NSO has actually existing and strong relationships with the media, you can really, really leverage on this in times of crisis, in times where their reputation is at risk because of some situation. So having a crisis, so just some points here to consider is make sure the NSO has a crisis communications plan. That would be so much more efficient as it has your crisis communications team, the relevant people you need to contact with and reach out to. So that makes things much quicker. Drafting a few holding statements or a few position statements based on some scenarios that might arise is helpful as well. So it's just a little like toolkit that you just grab that holding statement, make some tweaks and push it out. And remember, we do not always need to respond to media inquiries. Sometimes they are picking on some things that might actually make a story bigger than it is if they get a response from you. So I would leave that to be on a case-by-case basis, depending on the crisis. And of course, use existing journalist relationships that the NSO has to have them on their side, or understand from them what the media landscape is going to look like on this, like where, yeah, how this crisis could escalate in the media. Again, it's really important to have strong relationships to begin with. And then engaging in regular media monitoring, that's on Twitter, that's on different just news networks, to continuously be up to date with that. I would advise the NSO to always do that in times of crisis. And here's where they can have a specific press kit for this crisis. The press kit would be the one place where the media can go and get all the information they need, all the updates on this crisis. And I think I would bring an example of the BSA, the Boy Scouts of America, who have done this in the middle of the big crisis that they were going through a couple of years ago. They had a dedicated website that was specifically for media to get all the information and download all the assets they needed, that really gave them the explanation and updates on the crisis situation that they were facing. And yep, I would just leverage again on the trusted contacts with the journalists. And this is for also rebuilding the image of the NSO after a crisis. So this is very important for post-crisis on how you can position the NSO in a more positive light in future coverage after a crisis. Okay, next. Okay. Sorry, I forgot to update this photo. This is the generic one. Okay, so back to some events that Nelson and Mercy were talking about earlier, and how to attract media. So events should always be used as just an opportunity for you to either build connections with journalists or do the media outreach and invite them to this event. So it can be from an event like a small national jamboree to a big conference that is taking place in the country. And this is where it's very important to follow certain steps so you can involve the media in there. And that is having a press kit dedicated to this event with the details. It has a press release in there, a fact sheet about a program they're launching or the national jamboree, and along with the general media kit of the NSO. So this is always very important. Send out personalized invitations to the media about this event. I would do it 2 to 3 weeks in advance and then send a reminder along with the press kit that to remind them that they're invited to the event on this specific date and time. Usually you can dedicate one day of this event only to media visits, or it can be an open event for media to come in at any time. But it's also sometimes helpful for the team to just have one day that the media are invited for. Maybe something specific is happening on that day, an opening ceremony, or yeah. And offering interviews on the ground. This is where you do the outreach to the media with the press kit about the event, or your invitation is inviting them to do some interviews that they could also sell on their channels. And dedicating a press officer during the event is also really, really helpful, because if media do come, you don't want them to be lost, and you do want somebody, a dedicated person, who will be the one taking care of the media and making sure they get what you invited them to get to the event for. And post-event, or even towards the end of the event, I would send a press release, about the event, or wrapping up this event with some photos, because for journalists who were not able to attend your event, it might be a very easy piece of coverage for them to put out regardless. So providing them with photos from the event and a press release could be a way as if they actually attended. And yeah, to just make sure, basically, like, we're begging you to to cover our things. So yeah, just make it very easy for them. And and I think this so I'm not keeping track of time, so I'm being very quick. Yeah, that's all for this. I'll go back to you.
We had a couple of questions as you were talking. I don't know, Farah, if it makes sense to answer them now or wait till the Q&A. What do you think?
Maybe let's wait for the Q&A. Do you want to do it first?
Yeah. We'll wait till the Q&A. Hang on, I'm just going to try to press the mute button. Okay, so now, as you've all seen, sorry, I was trying to figure out how to press the mute button. So now what we're going to do is give you guys the chance to, take part and engage in, and not just listen to us. We wanted to split you all into 2 groups and to think from the perspective of you've already gone through all the training, you finished, you've done everything you need to, and now you're in the position where you need to help an NSO dealing with a particular problem. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to split you all into 2 groups. So I think there's 5 of you, and then we'll assign sort of 2 and 3, and then one group will also obviously have the interpreter going with them. And group 1, so you're only going to be addressing one problem. The first group will be addressing this problem. So your NSO is due to host its biggest annual event later this year. They want to promote it in the news, but they haven't been active in public and media relations for quite some time due to limited capacity. This is a very common thing. This is really, really common. So it's actually quite a good one to do. Think about how you would support them and what actions could you suggest that they take. Now, group 2, your NSO has suffered from a major data breach in which the names and contact details of many scouts were taken. Now, this threatens to create long-term distrust in scouting in your nation. Here again, what can you do to support the NSOs? What actions do you suggest that they take? How can you support them from a consultant's perspective? Okay, I will copy this text in the chat as well. Hopefully that means that you'll be able to see it. And I will just stop sharing my screen so that I can split you all into groups. Actually, Farah, could I ask that you copy the text as well? Sorry, I'll also figure
Exactly,
out.
I was just about to do that. Yes, so we'll put it in the chat right now.
Yes, please. My goodness, how do you do breakouts? Oh, there we go, breakout rooms. Sorry, you can tell it's been a while. Okay, I'm going to all assign you. Co and Jean-Marie and Julia, you are going to be in group 1, and Farah, I'll put you in group 1 too. And then I will assign the rest of you to group 2. Okay, there we go. See you all, in about 15 minutes, I guess. Sorry, I always forget that when you close the breakout rooms, it gives you a 60 seconds rather than closing it immediately. So we'll give the other team like 30 more seconds to come back.
Yes, they will get few seconds for wrap up.
Yes. I think we're just missing Jean-Marie. Give him some time to head back in the room. Whilst waiting, I don't know, Farah, if you wanted to just do like a little summary of what happened in your room.
Yes, of course. We had to actually, yeah, some interesting feedback. I'll share first, Julia, what she was sharing, that the similar situation happened to them during their jamboree in Sweden, where they didn't have really existing relationships with the media. And before the event, they managed to target local. They focused on local journalists as opposed to the big networks to get coverage from that. And that was really successful that they focused on local ones because they got the interest from that. But from this, they also, which I found to be a really good practice actually, is they equipped the local groups because they were from different districts. So they equipped the local groups with a media kit. So the scouts themselves could actually be the spokespeople with the journalists, and they linked them together, and that created that interest and that coverage. I don't know, Julia, if you want to add to anything I missed, but I think that's a really good practice to have.
Yes, so in short was that we made like scout specific like a media kit, like the 10 facts to talk about when about the jamboree, and also like advice on how to reach out to journalists and what to do in that case, and how to handle an interview, like how to formulate your answers and similar, so that the smaller like local scout troops could have could feel like brave enough to reach out and to have those interviews both in radio and in local newspapers and even local TV sometimes. So I think that was the majority of our outreach was through that, like just local newspapers.
Yeah, I think we can consider that as a best practice from NSO. That's a really good approach. And then, yeah, and Jean-Marie was also sharing that during 2020, at the beginning of the COVID lockdowns, their NSO did a scouting from home program, which everything was turned online, and this got picked up by the media when they didn't really have much media coverage before that. And then the media started to publish photos of scouts doing scouting from home. And then the scouts themselves would reach out to the media networks sending pictures, and that was a thing that was really picked up. But he did also touch on an important point, which was they are on a really small island. So a lot of the journalists are very familiar with scouting. He's a journalist himself who is a scout as well. So it's easy for that, for people to really know what scouting is, and easier to get picked up in the media.
Thank you. I'll do like I'll touch on some points. I'm just wary of the time, so I'll go through these as quickly as possible because I think we're running a little bit over. So in my group, which was talking about cybersecurity and how to deal with crisis communications. So we talked about mapping out some of the potential dangers, creating an action plan, working with the NSOs to create an action plan in order to combat and mitigate any potential foreseeable issues on the horizon. We also talked about reaching out to experts within the NSO You know, if you need advice on, you know, if it's a legal issue, see if your NSO has anybody who deals with legal issues. You know, I suppose it's acknowledging where you don't necessarily have the expertise and passing that on to somebody, and potentially if they are comfortable and they've been trained to make that person a spokesperson. We also talked about how the importance of acknowledging a problem, a mistake, and responding to it. It helps build trust with, you know, your target audience, and also following that up with frequent communications. We talked about reviewing and any existing policies in response to, say, for example, the cybersecurity breach, and training of staff in the appropriate areas. And we also talked about stakeholder mapping and the importance of figuring out who your target stakeholders are, and perhaps adjusting communications accordingly to fit the needs and the concerns of these set audiences. Is there anything else from the group, you guys, that I missed?
No, perfect. You make it saw everything. You touched everything. Thank you.
Great. I think in the last few minutes, although we have technically gone over, we had just left this as a Q&A. Unfortunately, one of the things that happened when everybody went into the breakout rooms is that we lost the message history. So I do remember a lot of the questions were coming through, Farah, as you were talking about some of the, you know, your 5 areas, the NSOs, the things that they could do. And I think, Julia, you had a question on how those points could be tailored to an NSO with limited resources, if I remember that was. Farah, do you want to?
Yeah, sure, I'll take that. And yes, I think a lot of the time they will have limited resources, but that's where I think we can come in to just lay the foundation for some of these things. Like, they will be to put together the media kit, I think would be the most time-consuming task. But I think getting the buy-in from different people in the NSO will really help you, just to have this as like a long-term thing that they can just keep updating. I don't think they would need a dedicated media person to have that. If you've been taken on as a consultant to help them with their media relations, just establishing a media kit for them and telling them to continue to update it every quarter. I don't know how feasible that is, but that seems like not such a complicated task for them to do with the absence of a media person or a comms person. And building building relationships with journalists, that I know that does require someone to really be there continuously doing that and building out that list. So if they can dedicate a person to do this, I mean, not fully do that if they don't have a comms person, but someone from the NSO to every now and then dedicate 2 hours to just searching for different journalists and putting them in the list might help. But yeah, I understand that it's not, I mean, I don't think all of them are really complicated to do, but it definitely helps a lot to have somebody in place who can take that on.
If I can add to that as well, one thing that is also a consideration is maybe we get very, you know, there are so many potential contacts when you think of like contacting journalists. There's just so many areas you could go in, so many different angles. So perhaps in the absence of a dedicated person or limited time, you could focus really on like a handful of people who would be, you know, maybe specialize in your particular area or specialize in I don't know, whatever campaign it is that you're looking for. So there's real relevance for them. And this touches into the point that Farah made about tailoring communication. So if you don't have someone who's dedicated, who can spend like every day taking calls or sending emails to like 50 or 100, you know, people and updating these fantastic media lists, really hone into a few specialist people, find out who they are, follow them on social media, get them to follow you back, harness those, those really kind of, a bit like friendships in a way. You don't have time to really cultivate like true friendships with 100 people, or if you have that talent, that's amazing. So it's really about like finding the right people who can make maximum amount of impact for the limited time that you have.
Yes.
Oh, I think there was, oh, sorry, Farah, did you?
Yeah, I agree with that.
The other question that I remember, I think it was from Shiko.
Yeah.
It was on how would you find the right media contacts? Was that correct?
Yes, if you're a consultant from a different, if you're not from the same country that the NSO is, which I think is a really, really good question.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember that.
You said it better than me.
So she goes asking, how do you help them build out a media list if you are a consultant that's not from the same country as the NSO? I think that's a very good question. So sometimes I feel like with the NSOs I've dealt with, you have people there that have some sort of connection with some media contacts to begin with. Now, the list doesn't also have to be a huge list. It can be a very focused and targeted list of contacts, press contacts. But it's also, this is where the mapping of the audience comes in. That's on you as a consultant to help them map out their audience and where where the audience is found and what they're consuming, so that they can do the homework themselves and find those journalists. It does not need to be you. You're also building, your role as a consultant is also to build the capacity of the NSO. So walking them through the steps for them to do that homework and to do that outreach, and list all the possible, I don't know, television shows, radio shows, different magazines or newspapers, would also be a good way for them to build the capacity and reach that outcome, I think. I hope that answered your question, did it?
Raquel, I remember you also posted one, but I think it was it followed on from Julia. Yes. Please go.
I can. Oh, wait, you're muted, Raquel.
Sorry. I was just adding up and saying that sometimes it's a huge task in the beginning, but then it becomes a routine. If you every, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, you check the list if this journalist is working on that place, still working on that place, and so on. So it would be, it's a huge task to come up with the first ones, but then afterwards it's easier. And if I may add to everything that you guys said, I'm a newsroom journalist by trade. So 2 things that I would add to that. So to come up with this list, sometimes you just, to come up with the first most important ones, just figure out who is the scouting talking to in that country. For instance, here in Brazil, we used to have inside the newspapers like family-oriented sections. So wow, that's where scouting goes. You know, that was easy. Oh, we had also magazines towards parents and children. So there goes scouting as well. So sometimes it's easy if you map the niche where scouting is talking to. Sometimes it's, I don't know, more activists, or sometimes it's more community service. I don't know. It depends on the country. So that's one thing. And the other thing is when we are talking to journalists, scouting has a very different timing and different deadlines comparing to journalists. So if you're talking to a monthly magazine, sometimes it's being made 2 to 3 months before the event. So forget about it. You know, if it's a print magazine, if it's a website, we also have to remember that most of our events occur on Saturdays and Sundays or weekends or whatever the country is. So what happens is on weekends, we usually have like one person in the newsroom. So you have to talk maybe 3 weeks ahead so they can plan a second person or a person, a journalist and a photographer or whatever to, you know, to add up to this one person team to cover everything. Otherwise, your event won't be covered at all. And I'm really sorry to say that, but that's what happens. Newsrooms are becoming smaller and smaller by the day. And a lot of people work from home. And sometimes they don't have the resources, so you have to plan ahead.
Thank you so much, Raquel. And I think it's actually very interesting that you're not alone. As Farah said, you know, Jean-Marie, he's also a journalist. We also have other journalists and former journalists who are consultants as well. And I think that's really wonderful that we have you on board because you bring that perspective that sometimes the NSOs won't have. They will, like you said, be working on different timeframes, different assumptions, but you have that skill set of, you know, knowing where to find media, knowing who to contact, knowing how to do it, because you know this is, if you were, you know, in your day job, this is what you would want the information flow to look like. This is how much notice you need. This is the response time that you need. And so a lot of this kind of dealing with NSOs is going to be making them aware of the constraints and the realities, quite frankly, of what you have to deal with. One of the things that I find happens a lot with NSOs, and I think Farah will know this better than me, is that there's an assumption that if you just have a blanket press release, you know, I don't know, around the time of the event or like 6 months in advance, then that is enough. It's not, as you said, you know, you really need to kind of build these relations. You need to have advance warning. You need to have, you know, a well-rounded set of communications and appealing communications. And this is where you guys really can make a difference in showing what, you know, you would expect as a communications and media professional, and how you can use that knowledge to enhance the skills and the capacities of NSOs, because they won't necessarily, you know, maybe they do have people with that background, maybe they don't. Are there any other questions, or Farah, did you want to add anything?
No, I think everything's been covered.
We're a little bit over, but if anybody wants to ask another question, we're still here. No, we're all good. Okay, all right. Well then, if there are no more questions, then I guess we can call the end to this session. But if you do have anything that you want any clarity on, you know, please do get in touch on the channel or via on the Slack channel or via email. We'll be sending out the recording if you want to rewatch it over, the materials. If there's anything that we missed, you know, please do get in touch and let us know, because we would love to hear from you. So I guess all that's left is for me to say thank you to all for attending, particularly to Farah for dedicating her very late evening in KL for this, and also for Ko for jumping on with the interpretation very last minute. Yeah, so thank you all, and hope to speak soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.